So look, I can't think of the last time the word World War III was trending on Twitter 1.5 million times in a 24-hour span after what happened between Iran and U.S. And everybody's worried and they're messaging me, especially after the video I made back in September, I want to say, that was titled History of U.S.-Iran Conflict Explained, which if you haven't watched that, you got to watch it. Today's video is about recent events. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the timeline from April 8, 2019 to where we are today. I'm going to talk about who Soleimani is that was killed. Then we talk about the three reasons in war in the Middle East, the three main nations involved in the Middle East, who gets along with who, ways Iran can retaliate, where U.S. is weak at right now. My final thoughts about why this is a very unique situation with the current president U.S. has and the reputation Iran has, and what it can potentially lead to if we don't make the right choices next. So let's first go through the timeline. The thing I want you to keep in mind is that I'm not going to cover everything, although I'm going to leave the links for you to go out there and do your research. But I'm going to give you the main things that took place leading up to the killing of Soleimani and where we're at today with Iran and U.S. April 8, 2019, Trump announced the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, as a terrorist organization. You'll know why this is important later on. So next, June 20th, U.S. drone shot down by Iranian forces. U.S. claimed they were flying on international airspace. Iran claims it was Iran's airspace, so they shot it down. The next day on June 21st, Trump tweets he stopped last-minute drone strike as retaliation. Iran sees this. The following day on June 22nd, Iran said they would respond firmly to U.S. if U.S. did anything. On July 1st, Iran exceeds limit amount of enriched uranium, which is what the most people are concerned about around the world. What if Iran has nuclear warheads? Following, on September 10th, Bolton gets fired over Iran because Trump was a little bit too concerned. A lot of people that know John Bolton really wants to go to war. Some even call him a warmonger, so Trump fired him. Next, on September 14th, this was a big event. Aramco, that by the way just went public in September, it's $1.5 trillion company. Aramco oil attacks on facility. U.S. says it was Iran. Iran says it wasn't us. Houthis, which is a Yemen rebel group, took responsibility, but pretty much everybody around the world knows this was Iran. Next, on September 24th, Trump asks countries around the world to tighten economic tension towards Iran at UN General Assembly.
All nations have a duty to act. No responsible government should subsidize Iran's bloodlust.
This is very interesting because at this time, a month after that, I was at Monaco. I went to Cannes and I spoke to a very strong political figure out of Lebanon. And he says when this took place, they had to tighten all the banks, all the businesses with Iran. This really hurt Iran's economy, but they were not feeling it yet. So let's fast forward to November 15. Watch what happens. Protesters in Iran. You remember this if you watch the news. They were furious because Iran, all of a sudden, with no warning, raised gas prices by 200 to 300%. This led to 631 people being killed. That was told by the opposition, but Amnesty International said it was around 300. Iran denied it regardless that the event took place. Next, on December 11th, sanctions on Iran now included shipping and airline industry, which is obviously getting tighter and tighter and tighter with making money. On December 27, 2 days after Christmas, a U.S. contractor was killed in Iraq by Hezbollah, which is an Iranian-backed militia, and obviously this infuriated a lot of people on Trump's administration. A couple days later, U.S. targets militia sites as a retaliation for the attacks of the contractor that they killed. On New Year's Eve, December 31st, a pro-Iranian paramilitary broke into a heavily fortified American embassy in Baghdad. Now, obviously, this is like, wait a minute. Are you wanting to push the envelope? You're pushing yourself right now where the U.S. may retaliate. Then comes New Year's Day. Then comes January 2nd. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper warns Iran may be planning attacks. So everybody's like, wait a minute, what do you mean Iran is planning attacks? This is January 2nd. And this leads us to the big event, which is on January 3rd. Okay, U.S. kills Qasem Soleimani at Baghdad airport at 1:20 a.m. This is very important for you to know what 1:20 a.m. means. Iran comes out and says there's going to be a harsh retaliation, okay? Harsh retaliation for what was done. On January 4th, Trump tweets and threatens Iran that if they do anything, we will hit 52 cultural sites of Iran, which, by the way, he couldn't do. A couple days later, he took that back and said we couldn't do it because they came back and said you can't do that with UN law. When it comes down to war, you cannot have cultural sites. But he did make that threat on January 4th. Afterward, January 5th, Iraqi parliament calls for expulsion of foreign troops, meaning, hey, U.S., leave Iraq. For many, many years, we've been good allies. We've been okay with Iraq. Now you're telling us to leave. So Trump says, if you want us to leave, we're going to put the worst sanctions, worse than Iran, on Iraq. And Iraq kind of came back and said, okay, just stay. But listen, stop kind of making our life a little bit tougher than what it is right now because Iran trying to attack us. January 6th, Rouhani tweets, those who refer to 52 should also remember the number 290. Never threaten the Iranian nation. In the tweet, he explains the 290 was the amount of civilians killed on an airline that was shot down under the Reagan administration back in the 80s. So he's reminding, you talk about 52? We're going to talk about 290. That's Rouhani. January 7th, 56 people were killed in the stampede during the ceremony, during the funeral of Soleimani, which they had to delay the funeral and actually change some of the times because of the 56 people that were killed. Now, Iran comes out, this is very important for you to catch this, Iran comes out and says on January 7th, look, we're willing to work with you, we're willing to go peace and make this thing work. And U.S. is like, oh, okay, Iran's willing to work with us. So after Rouhani says that, watch what they do. Remember the 1:20 a.m.? At 1:20 a.m. on January 8th, Iran shoots 12 missiles and hits Iraqi bases that houses U.S. military forces. That's what they do. Then, few hours later, Khamenei comes out and talks to Iranians and says the following. Last night, we slapped them in the face.
بحث انتقام و این حرفا بحث دیگری است. حالا یه سیلی دیشب به اینها زده شد.
This is a way of saying we responded to what U.S. did to us. This is the timeline we have so far on what's taking place with U.S. and Iran. So now let's talk about who Qasem Soleimani is. Is he as big as everybody makes him out to be? Who is this man? Qasem Soleimani was born in the religious city of Qom. He was raised in Kerman, which Kerman is a very well known for politics that they teach and what Iran stands for and traditions. And by the way, the funeral was held in Kerman later on. Reports indicate he joined the IRGC, hence, remember IRGC? What I told you earlier on April 8, Trump announced the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He joined the IRGC as a youth, at the beginning of the Iranian Revolution in 1979 and played many roles until he took over leadership of the Quds Force in 1997. This is very important. This was announced 8.5 months later, he gets killed. 9 months later, he gets killed, right? So now let's continue. IRGC specializes in unconventional warfare, okay, and military operations that supports non-state actors. These are rebels, militia rebels, that in many countries, such as Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in Gaza Strip or West Bank, Yemeni, Houthis, Shia militias in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. These are the rebels they support, and he is the voice behind all of these guys, supporting them with strategies of what to do next, and he is brilliant when it comes down to being strategic. He was listed as a terrorist by the U.S. They categorized him as at that. When he passed away, it was said that 82% of Iranians supported him. Now, part of this could be propaganda because a lot of times, you know, like there's a lot of Trump supporters that will never say they're Trump supporters until the day comes to go vote, but they will never talk about it, never say anything. And then, boom, 58 million people show up to go out there and vote from whatever the number is. Where did you show up out of nowhere? You never talked about Trump because they're afraid because they know if you support Trump, maybe the media is going to say stuff to them and at your job, you may lose something. There were also some people that opposed him but never wanted to say anything. These are the people that voted to say we support him 82%. He's a military genius, took lead in Iraq of Shia militia group. He's seen as the potential next leader of Iran, not just a general military strategist, the commander of special forces. He's not just that. He is seen as that. I want to remind you, I did an interview with Sammy Gravano. He said one thing. He says, Patrick, never worry about the person that pulls the trigger. Always worry about the person that's orchestrating in the back, behind the scenes, and pulling the strings of what to do next. That is Soleimani. That's who he is, okay? So now we have an idea of who was killed. He has killed a lot of Americans. He's killed a lot of Iranians. And he is hated and feared by a lot of people. And then there's a community that loves him. And here's why. A lot of times we can talk about it all from everybody's perspective on how glad they are that he's dead. The other perspective is the following. You don't mind having a guy like this on your side. if that makes any sense. Make sense? So you know how everybody has that one friend that everybody fears? You don't mind having that guy with you because everyone fears him. You just don't want to be his enemy. And if he's your enemy, you got to get rid of him because he wasn't a supporter of U.S. And so U.S. had to make that decision. They took the shots. It is what it is. That decision has been made. Many people are happy this took place. Some are not happy this took place. Now let's continue. Let's talk about the 3 reasons why there's always war and havoc in the Middle East. Number 1, it's religion. What do you mean by religion? Here's some basic things you got to know about religion. 93% of the population in the Middle East, they're Muslims. 93% are Muslims, right, in the Middle East. Christians, 3.7%, Jews, 1.6%, mostly in Israel. Unaffiliated 1%, and Hindus around 1%. Now watch this. Breakdown of Muslim. This is interesting to know what the breakdown of Muslim is. Muslim has 2 different denominations, if you want to put it, right? There's the Sunnis and there's the Shias. Now the Sunnis, of the 93% of Muslims in the Middle East, 85% are Sunnis. 15% are Shias. In the world population, there's 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide. Of the worldwide population, 1.4 billion is Sunnis, 200 million is Shias. Just for you to know this. Now, how did this Sunnis and Shias controversy start? When Prophet Muhammad died in 632, he had 4 followers. One of them was Abu Bakr, which was a good friend of his. Then it was Umar, Uthman, and then it was Ali, which was a son-in-law. When that took place, he hadn't created a succession plan. A lot of people said he would have chosen Abu Bakr as his successor because that was his best friend and it was his number 1 follower. But a lot of people said, no, it's got to be somebody part of his family. It's got to be Ali. So at this moment, there was a division. They voted, and they voted for Abu Bakr to be the leader and the successor of Prophet Muhammad in the Muslim religion. They became Sunnis, and those who said Shia Ali, they became Shias. That was a division right there. To keep that part in mind, you have to know that Iran is mostly Shia. 90% of Iranian population, the religious, the Muslims are Shias, 10% Sunnis, and Saudi Arabia is Sunni. So keep that in mind. You have Iran is Shia, Iraq is in the middle, and in Saudi is Sunni. Okay, so that's that part that you're looking at. Now, as we're looking at these things, this was religion. Point number 2 is oil. Why oil? Obviously, everyone knows what's going on with oil. There's 2 numbers I want you to be thinking about with oil. One of them is supply. How many billions of barrels the top 5 biggest suppliers of oil are? Number 1 is Venezuela. We've done a video on Venezuela. That's a complete different story. 300 billion barrels. Number 2 is Saudi Arabia, 267. Number 3 is Canada, 173. Number 4 is Iran, 158. And number 5 is Iraq, 150. 3 out of the 5 top suppliers of oil all live neighboring each other. Think about how big the world is. 3 out of 5 are right next to each other. Do you think there's a little bit of controversy and conflict going on there with competitiveness? Now, top producers of oil. Number 1 is U.S. It's roughly 15 million barrels a day. And this is a lot of the fracking that we're doing in the quotas. It's not necessarily that we're bringing it in or we're selling it. We're pretty much using everything that we need with the oil because we need it. It's not like we're selling it to anybody else like some of these other nations. They make the money off oil. We don't. We take it ourselves. Saudi Arabia is second, 12 million barrels a day. Then it's Russia, 10.8 million barrels a day. Then it's Iraq, 4.4. Then it's Iran, 3.9. Then it's China, 3.9. The reason why I put China here is for a point I'll make to you later on. How this whole thing could hurt China, you'll see why in a minute. So you got religion, you got oil, and the last one is nuclear warheads. Let's talk about nuclear warheads. Watch this. Leaders in nuclear warheads around the world. Number 1 is Russia, 6,500. Number 2 is U.S., 6,185. These are the 2 powerhouses. By the way, 90% of all nuclear warheads are owned by 2 countries, Russia and U.S. That's what 90% of all around the world. And there's only 9 nations that have nuclear warheads. Out of all the countries that we have, only 9 have nuclear warheads. Russia's 4, then U.S. and France 300. China's 290. UK 215. Pakistan 150. India 140. Israel 90. North Korea 30. What nations do we talk about? I didn't say Germany. I didn't say Japan. Not Iran, not Saudi Arabia, not South Korea, not United Arab Emirates, not Italy. You mean to tell me Germany, as big of an empire that they had, they didn't? Yes, because they signed a treaty that they wouldn't, because